CZ Studio and Radio Verté presents The Wild Wind by Cory Zimmerman.
Chapter 12. Throughout history, the female criminal has been cast as a double deviant. First, because she violated the law, and second, and perhaps more importantly, because she had violated the moral parameters of womanhood. And seen as beyond conversion or reform, once behind the walls of the penitentiary, Fannie knew there was no escape. The penitentiary was dirty, crowded, and each woman was isolated in a dry cell, with only a pot to piss in, locked up for 23 hours a day. If you wanted a blanket, you had to steal one. There was no exercise, no games or crafts, nothing more or less than a Puritan vision of hell, pure and simple. The perimeter of the cell house was lined with each cell, with the day room in the middle. As the guard with the master key released them for their 1 hour, they would congregate in small clusters about the floor of the day room to converse. "Is that a baby crying?" asked Fannie as an attractive lady named Caroline jumped to her feet and ran off in tears. "Did I say something to upset her? She's just jealous, that's all," said Irene, a slightly overweight black woman in her mid-40s. "Jealous?" asked Fannie. "Of what?" "The baby," said Irene, as Fannie smirked in confusion. "Guard Lewis is the baby's daddy. Florence is the mama," said Esther, a skinny pale girl, no older than 25. The exact type of gal that really makes you wonder what she must have done to end up in a place like this. "The guard brings his baby to work?" asked Fannie. "Ain't no one supposed to know it's his baby," said Irene. "He sneaks his baby to work? At least till they find it a proper home." "He lives here?" asked Fannie. "With Florence," said Esther, "in her cell." Fannie was speechless. "Caroline's just upset because she's dumb enough to think you only be doing it with her," said Irene. "Who?" asked Fannie. "Guard Lewis," said Esther, squirming on her hands. "I sure hope you got family or some cash stashed away, because I know he gonna like you, honey," said Irene, squat on her round bottom, chin in her palms, bored out of her mind. Irene had been there for a long time after all. "No money, no family, no food. As you can see, I got family." And she grabbed a layer of fat around her belly. "So we're supposed to starve to death?" Fannie asked, as it was truly her biggest fear in life, and she knew outright she'd much rather be burnt alive. "Nope, you're supposed to let Guard Lewis have his way with you," said Esther, bouncing on her hands. "Honey, what do you know about having anything any which way anyhow?" asked Irene, and Esther looked down and grew quiet. "Money, family, or sex, honey? What's your name anyhow? Allison, Anastasia, Betty, Bertie, Kathy, Diana, Dorothy, Eleanor, Ethel, Fannie, Frances, Ginger, Helen, Jackie, Jacqueline, Kathleen, Lily, Margaret." "Wait a minute. Fannie? You mean you're Fannie? The Fannie?" Irene's eyes lit up. "Well, I suppose I am," said Fannie. "Good Lord, cleverest swindler and confidence woman to ever grace the Midwest Plains sitting right here before me. I can't believe it." "Hey girls, it's Fannie. You know, Fannie the Feigner," she yelled across the room, throwing the back of her hand across her forehead, feigning to drop to the floor behind her. All the women turned and looked and then whispered amongst themselves. "Sex for food?" Fannie asked. "And to think the warden told me to take advantage of this opportunity to find God?" Come dinner time, Fannie was back in her cell when Guard Lewis came along with a plate of bread, meat, cheese, and potatoes. "Well, hey there, darling," he said, as Fannie looked up at him in silence. He sniffs at the air. You sure is ripe, ain't ya?" But Fannie said nothing. "What's the matter, Bertie?" Cat got your tongue? You really ought to watch your tail feathers. There's a mean cat a-roaming. Fannie looked at the food as it steamed up toward his face, youthful yet tarnished with Satanism. Well, here you go, little bird. Dinner's on me. Birdie lunged for the plate just as he yanked it away. First one and only one, understand? Welcome to the cat house, little bird. Late that night, Fannie awoke to his cell being closed, and she saw Guard Lewis walk past with a grip on Caroline's arm. Later that day, Fannie asked Irene, "Where's Caroline? I saw Guard Lewis take her away last night." "She probably still sleeping then," said Irene. "They say Guard Lewis got quite the stamina." "Wait, you never?" Fannie began to ask. "Hell no," Irene answered abruptly. "I told you, I'm fat. Look at me. I got family who helps me out. Besides, I got caught bringing myself off one night a few years back by this guard named James. Real stickler. By the book kind of guy. Anyhow, he took me to the warden, who sent me to the doctor. Said I was hysterical and fixed me." "He what?" asked Fannie. "He cut off that thing," said Esther with a blush. "The thing?" asked Fannie. "Yeah, the thing," said Irene, nodding down toward her crotch. "No," said Fannie. "Yep," said Irene. "No more ring around the rosy for me." "Wait, why does Caroline, how could she have feelings for such a creep?" asked Fannie. "Daddy issues," said Esther. "Guess she thinks she goes along with it, she ain't gonna get hurt again," said Irene. "Again?" asked Fannie. Esther shook her head yes. "Daddy issues," said Esther with wide eyes. The following day, Guard Lewis arrived at Fannie's cell with no plate of food. "Hey there, little bird, making yourself at home in your new nest?" Fannie stared at him with disdain. "Jeet yet?" he asked. "Course you hadn't. So, little bird, I'm sure you know how this works. So what you got for me?" He unlocked the door, walked in, and took a look around. "Doesn't look like you got much to offer, little bird," he said with a grin. "Come on, stand up. Go on now, turn around, face the wall." Fannie stared him down. "Now," he ordered. Fannie turned toward the wall. "Hands on the wall." Now let's see what you got tucked away in this pretty little get-up of yours," as he placed his hands on her hips, working his way down her thighs, and then back up toward her pelvis, up her belly to her chest, where he stopped and fondled her breasts. Fannie clenched her teeth and stared angrily at the wall, but remained still and silent. After all, she had known worse than this. "I see you ain't got no cash. How exactly you plan on getting anything to eat round here? You think you gonna get a free ride, little bird, 'cause you a hot little number? Well, why don't you come with me and we'll fix you up a plate?" "No," said Fannie. She had known worse than this. "No?" he asked with a squeeze of her breast before dropping his hands to his side. "No?" and in a voice of bewilderment. "Didn't you know you ain't allowed to say no?" "Nope, not in here. Not in the cat house. In the cat house, you got one word, and that word is yes, sir." "That's 2 words, and no," said Fannie, just as he backhanded her across the face, knocking her to the ground. Guard Lewis then walked out of her cell and slammed the door shut, saying, "Oh, you gonna eat, or I'm gonna eat you, little bird. You see, round here, you gonna learn to be nice to me, just like the rest of them. You hear me?" In the day room. "Oh my, look at that shiner," said Irene. "Guard Lewis?" asked Cecil. "That son of a bitch is gonna get his," said Fannie. "Calm down, honey. Go get Fannie a blanket." Esther returned quickly and wrapped a blanket around Fannie. "Hell, I should have gave it to you once I learned who you was and all. Slipped my mind. I can't tell you what a hero you are to me. Hell, all of us. We've been hearing about you for years. You've been the freest woman I ever heard of. Now I can say I knew you." Irene paused before saying, "Fannie, just be careful. He a dangerous man," and Esther nodded. "You looking awfully skinny. Esther, go get Fannie some bread from my cell." "Don't worry about me. I can handle Guard Lewis," said Fannie. "I've dealt with men like him all my life." For 5 days, Guard Lewis skipped Fannie's cell, but Irene kept her fed in the meantime. Fannie watched once more as Caroline was led away by the arm. Caroline looked over into Fannie's eyes, and Fannie saw a mixture of delight and pain, and she gave a slight grin. But once she was out of sight, she frowned, cried, and then spoke to Cecil. What am I gonna do, Cecil? I just need to think. No. I can't do that, Cecil. What do you know about how to survive anyhow? You think I've been living on the high hog? No, Cecil, no. I've been scrapping by ever since you decided to get comfy in the ground, damn you. I saw him take Caroline again, said Fannie. Gonna have to get used to it, said Irene. They're in love, said Esther. He doesn't love her, snapped Fannie. There must be something we can do to help her. Honey, you're gonna have to save all these girls then. I say you do what you always done and save yourself, said Irene. That bastard, said Fannie. The three then sat in silence a moment. How does a person get out of here anyhow? Fannie asked. You mean break out? Asked Esther. Has anyone ever broke out of here? Asked Fannie. Hell, I never seen it happen, said Irene. And I've been going on 12 years now. So how do I break out? You gotta go mad, said Esther. Cuss and scream and lose your senses. What you gotta do, honey. You gotta break things. Hell, break your own arm if you gotta. You gotta break something to break out, said Irene. Yep, said Esther. You ever seen anyone break their arm on purpose? Asked Irene. No, that would be insane, said Fannie. Exactly, said Esther and Irene simultaneously. When Guard Lewis came around, Fannie had to act weak, as though she had not eaten in days. So, little bird, stomach a-growling? I know mine sure is. And as he unlocked the door, come on now, let's go get you a plate. Fannie stood up and went with him, and he took her by the arm to a storage room where he locked the door behind her. Looking around, he said, Well, shit, I guess this ain't the kitchen. Must have made a wrong turn. But I'm sure we can find something to eat around here somewhere. Huh, there you go, he said as he pulled his penis out of his pants. Now go on. But Fannie turned her head away. He shoved her over into the wall, and in a rage, kicked her right in the face, knocking her out cold. All the other women locked in their cells watched in silence as Guard Lewis dragged Fannie back to her cell by the arm. Later that day, as she sat with Irene and Esther cleaned the gash above her eye when another inmate walked up and set a piece of bread before her, and then another approached with another piece of bread. She was then given a chunk of cheese and a cup of soup, a chunk of meat, as almost every inmate came to sit food at Fannie's feet. But all Fannie saw was a pile of sexual favors. A pile of rape, coercion, and blackmail, and a constant fear of violence. Later that night in her cell, she told Cecil, I think I got an idea. That's it, Cecil. I done figured it out. I'm getting the hell out of here. When Guard Lewis passed by Fannie's cell the next day, she called for him. What the hell you want? He asked. Please, sir, I'm starving. I'll do anything you ask. I promise you. Just please take me. By the time Guard Lewis stumbled from the storage room, he was doused in vomit with his pants at his knees, moaning in agony with a look of total disbelief on his face. Fannie had already torn her clothes to shreds and had begun to climb the bars of the cells, howling like a rabid beast as the vomit foamed about her lips. Guard Lewis screamed in pain, You crazy bitch! You bit my dick off! As he collapsed, Fannie wailed on in bloody terror on his behalf. It took a dozen guards to pull her down from the bars and drag her out of the cell house by the legs. As she dug her nails into the floor until they bled, Fannie had managed to lift the keys from Guard Lewis while in the storage room, and amongst the commotion the guards had failed to notice that she slid them into Irene's cell. As the last of the guards helped Guard Lewis to his feet and walked him out of the cell house, Irene unlocked her cell, and then Esther's, and then another, and another, until all the women inmates came out howling in hysteria. Fannie, having instigated the first female prison riot in modern history, was thrown into solitary confinement under the care of the doctor. 6 weeks later, everyone stood at their bars in silence as the despondent Fannie was led back to her cell. A half a day went by before two guards returned with the warden and entered Fannie's cell. A moment later, they escorted her out with shackles around her wrists and ankles and she carried a folded blanket under her arm. As they passed Irene's cell, Bertie said, "Wait," and she handed the blanket back to Irene. Irene smiled and whispered, "You broke out." Fannie grinned, and the guards pulled her along. She walked in the tiny steps one may take with shackles upon their feet, the same tiny steps she had taken for a lifetime, as Esther began to clap, and then everyone, until the applause turned to chants of Fannie, and then Bertie, as arms began to flap within their cages, circling in jubilation. The roar sent chills of inspiration and hope down their spines. And long after Fannie turned and bowed, each woman stood taller and proud to be a double deviant.